your muscles, especially like your heart muscle, as a muscle, and it's needing either oxygen or not, depending on where you're at and what interval or what exercise or activity you're doing. So in aerobic, think about what types of exercises would you be doing?
If you want to just stay aerobic, you won't want to be.
You won't go into that higher.
Marching, using your arms, you
Okay,
know,
yes.
you know, maybe add some different squats in.
Right.
You'll hop, you know, stuff like that to stay in your cardio.
And you want to think of yourself being in that 50 to 80% of your max. So you don't want to really go too high. You don't want to be breathless. We want to still be able to talk and breathe. So most of turbo kick, we want to stay in that. That's what Linda was just talking to us about. You want to stay in that phase of aerobic. Now there's going to be those intervals where we take it to anaerobic, and that's where we become breathless. So our body is working at a higher level. So that's 80 to 100%, which would be your max, which we don't want to stay there. And of course, our body cannot stay there. So you can actually stay, you know, in the aerobic phase for hours. For example, jogging. You could jog for an hour, and you're in that aerobic phase with oxygen. For example, turbo kick. Can you stay in turbo kick for an hour? I mean, in the turbo section for an hour? No. It's a short burst, right? It's a short burst of high intensity interval, and when you're done, you've got to walk it off because you're breathless. And you got to bring it back down to that aerobic. So thinking again, your heart is that muscle. So going in and out of those intervals helps us, it takes us into the overload principle, which most of you know this, but different examples would be, let's say if we were strength training, if we wanted to build muscle, you want to increase your dumbbell weight if you're using dumbbells, because if you stay at 8 your whole life, you're not really going to change much. You're just going to keep at that level. And so you want to think of that overload principle in everything. So whether it's, you know, with your turbo kick class, so for example, you could stay at a lower impact, or you could come up high. You could change it there too, and that would be changing your overload, or taxing your body and taking you to that next level, which may be harder. So you have to adapt. So adaptation is the biggest thing right here. So you want your body to, you want it to change. You don't want it to stay the same. So that's going to look different for everybody, right? And when we do this, these intervals, going in and out of aerobic and anaerobic, we recruit different types of muscles. So we have fast twitch and slow twitch muscles. So you want to actually access both of those, so that again, you're getting that, your body's reacting to your exercise. And you don't want to become too efficient, because then you're not really burning calories. So those of us who do, let's say for example, you only do turbo kick. After a while, your body's going to adapt, and it's going to just say, this is kind of boring, we need something else. And so I'm a big advocate of cross training. So strength training, which is like plyo, using your own body weight. Turbo kick is, you know, also, it's just using a variety of things so that your body does not just get stuck to one thing. You want to tax it and overload it a little bit. Looking at other, let me see what other points I want to make on that. The other thing, when you do the intervals, you're actually utilizing so many different systems. So not only our cardiovascular, but our neuromuscular, which is your nerve and your muscle. They have to work together, or else you don't walk or talk or move. I mean, you have to have those. Trust me, I know. Trust me. I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to share a personal story with you because it's so powerful to me, and I like to share it because there's other people in the world with this. I started teaching insanity, and for some reason, something just didn't feel right with my body, and I couldn't figure out why I would feel sick, but not sick like when I'm working out and I was taxing it, you know, where you feel like, oh gosh, not like that, it was afterwards. And I thought something's just not right. My hands feel weird, my arms feel weird. Long story short, I found out I had a brain malformation. Here's where the neuromuscular system was so important. I was losing strength because my nerves in my spinal cord coming down from my brain were not communicating with my muscles anymore. So I wasn't building muscle. I was just like working and working and working and seeing no change in my body. Why? Because that connection was lost. That was so key to me because I thought, oh, neuromuscular. If you have nothing feeding those muscles, the nerves, then it's just not going to make any change. So you can see how these intervals are so crucial. And that's just, like I said, a personal story to that I like, got it. I knew this stuff, but I got it. I was like, oh, no wonder your bicep's not growing. Because there's not a nerve feeding it. It was falling asleep because it was not healthy. So neuromuscular system, cardiovascular system, so thinking of our heart, like a runner, for example. I'm a nurse practitioner, so I work in the medical field, and I can have a young girl or guy come in and their heart rate's in maybe 50 something, and the parents are like, is he okay? The first thing I ask is he a runner? Is she a runner? And if the answer is yes, yeah, that's awesome. Their heart is a muscle, it's pumping. Every time it pumps, it's so strong that it's not pumping to get the blood, it's actually just pumping. And you can, so this is where Turbo Kick is so great, because it incorporates all of those intervals and those aerobic and anaerobic systems. So neuromuscular, cardiovascular, and then skeletal, because we do need weight-bearing activity. So with all the motion you're doing in Turbo Kick, you're actually also utilizing that system. So all of them just come together. It's a great thing. We're blessed with good health and able to do Turbo Kick. Trust me. If you can't do it, you'll appreciate it. The other thing is, I think preventing boredom, like I said to you earlier, that's where protein really comes in, which I know is just a side note, but you don't want your body to adapt. You want it to be like, what are you doing next? And your brain has to think, and your arm has to think, and your leg has to think, and you're like, which way are we going? Because that's what makes you stronger and better and faster. Like when you get new shoes and you jump faster, you jump higher and run faster. It's kind of like that. When you get a new round of turbo, you feel that way. You feel like, right? You feel like you can jump higher and run faster. So we want to prevent boredom. And I think, let me just see, Turbo Kick itself, we do, like I said, go into those different intervals. An example of a high interval would be, or anaerobic would be the turbo section. Coming into aerobic, or if we're doing a higher intensity movement, like say a jack with a kick, you could bring it down, and you'll notice that the format of the DVDs will show you where maybe you take it to a double bob. And you can stay up high, or that's your time where you can bring it back to aerobic, versus maybe this is anaerobic for you. It's really dependent on your body. And then the next question is going to be, how many calories do I burn in Turbo Kick class? Right? How many calories do I burn in Zumba? How many calories do I burn in Kaya? And what's the answer? There's so many variables. There are so many variables. And so, one is the person, the size of the person, the BMI of the person, so if they have a higher body fat composition or muscle mass, their intensity. So if they're very intense and jumping all over the place, I tend to be a lower intense, like, I like to stand around. My brain likes to stand around. So, but that's still intense. If I'm down in a low squat and I'm moving through this, I am recruiting my biggest muscles. So it's not, doesn't mean that it's any less intense, it's just a lower impact. So all of those little variables will kind of, depend on what you're gonna burn. And the use of your lever. So if your lever, which we don't want it to stop halfway, if your lever length is longer, with of course not locking at the end, you're gonna burn more calories, right? Because because you're taking it just a little bit longer, a little bit deeper, a little bit stronger. So those are all sort of the main, so you can answer that question. You could say, I guess if you wanted, you could burn anywhere from 300 to 1,000 calories. I mean, Venus just showed us her monitor, hers wasn't working. How many? 1,052. So, and that's from this morning? Yeah, so you can see she's done a little bit of lower impact, and then she went to the class, the master class, so she's already above 1,000. Again, it's going to vary on your size, your intensity, all the things we talked about. Which then leads us to how do we as instructors look at our class and know how hard they're working, and are they okay? Because it's our responsibility to be sure that they're safe. So if you see someone and they're like, what do? You better run to them. You better see what's wrong, because that is your responsibility as an instructor to look around. Even if you're in the mirror, you can look around in the mirror and watch your people. For one, for safety, to see if their form is okay. You don't want them to hurt themselves, and you don't want them to come back and say, my knees really hurt when I do this, or my back really hurts. You'll then know why, because you need to read them. You need to see what they're doing in class. So you want to be able to see, what is it, how are they feeling, how do they look? And you can't have them stop in the middle of a turbo kick class and take their pulse. Could you guys have stopped in the middle of a turbo kick class? There's no way. There's no way, because you're going to be like, was that a beat? Was that a beat? Was that a beat? Was that a beat? Because it's so fast. And so you want to use what they call the RPE scale, or rate of perceived exertion, which most of us know that because we teach fitness already. So what that is, it can be anywhere from a 0 to 20 scale or a 1 to 10 scale, it just depends. Of course, 1 being, pretty much at the bottom, you're not working too hard. 5 is the middle, and 10 is your max, if we use the 1 to 10 scale. Is my max the same as Brianna's max? No. Because she might be more cardio efficient, or I might be more cardio efficient, or maybe if we're doing strength training, I might be able to actually take myself to the anaerobic level where maybe she wants to do more cardio, endurance type stuff. So it's gonna vary. Not any of us are the same. So that's what we always encourage your students to know. And I will even say it in class, those of you who are my students will know, like, when you go to turbo, you want to be, what do you think it is? Because we're in anaerobic. With breath or breathless?
After turbo?
Yeah, after turbo. Breathless. So you want to remind them, like, where are you? And Linda said that to us a couple times when we were doing the master class. Where are you? How do you feel? If you're not able to talk and you're just in the punch section, you probably need to bring your intensity down a little bit, because you still have another like 45 minutes, depending on what your class length is. Like, you still have a long ways to go. So you want to be able to, it is subjective. So I can't say what somebody else feels. I can only say what I feel and how I am able to, say what my perceived exertion is. So that is really important for us as instructors, and it can be monitored at any point. So you can, they don't have to stop. You can just say, how are you guys doing? Just like she asked us, how are you guys doing? We're good. If I'm like, I probably should take my intensity down, correct? Yeah, so that's the great thing about it, is she can read me, and she can tell if I need to maybe take it down. Or maybe, she might say the whole class is it's too much, and so then she brings us down.
Yes.
Or you as an instructor bring us down. So that's the great thing about that. And there's no math. I don't know anything without math. If I have to do math, I'm not like it. I can do math, but I don't like to do it. So you don't have to count for 15 seconds and multiply times 4, or count for 30 seconds and multiply times 2. Rate of perceived exertion is that quick. How do you feel? I'm breathless. I have breath. I'm with oxygen. I'm without oxygen. What is it? So I think that's mostly. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add.
That's pretty good.